Hey guys, this is John,
And I'm Allie.
and we've got a special guest.
I'm Travis Frank, outdoor television host and John's personal fishing guide, and this is the Meatgistics podcast.
So Travis is nice enough to redo this with us. Allie and I traveled up to Kansas City during Pheasant Fest. We sat down for an awesome about hour and a half,
Yeah.
somewhere around that. Got to sit with him. There was a problem with the audio card or the
Yeah.
memory card we brought. So Travis
Bummer.
was nice enough.
Micro SD card. Yeah,
Yeah.
micro SD card. We are outdoor people, you are meat people, but the media card, the tiniest little thing that any of us brought to the show messed up.
That was my one responsibility too, was to bring that, and I brought it, and I brought it back. But
It just failed.
Mm.
It happens. It's not the biggest deal, but
can't
we
win them
really
all.
appreciate you making the time, Travis. Um, every every media request we make of you, you're always very willing to help. But
Mhm.
most importantly, and you brought it up already, you take me fishing.
And it's one of my favorite things to do. And anytime I have the opportunity to hang out with you guys, I'm taking it. So I'm sort of kind of glad that the card failed. Not gonna lie.
And the good thing, we were talking about this just before the podcast, and I think we all learned something about each other, and maybe it's okay that we do this ourselves now. We black out to a certain degree during media appearances, and at the
Mhm.
end of it, I often don't remember what we talked about.
So I was thinking as we were getting ready today, I'm like, I wonder what we're gonna talk about on the podcast today because I have no idea what we talked about for an hour and a half at Pheasant Fest. So I'm wide open, guys. I don't know where we're gonna go today. I have some ideas, but I think you might too.
I do, and I wrote down a few of them, just things that we talked about during the podcast up there that I remember. But a couple things have happened since we had that great talk up in Kansas City. First of all, the biggest shame is we won't have any dogs walking through that we can talk about because that
Oh,
part was
dang.
fun.
Well, I
Yeah.
have one right here. I actually have one over here.
It's
Daisy, come here. Come here, Daisy. Here, come on. Up, up. Here we go. Come here, girl. Oh,
To say I should have brought in my dad's dogs.
there we go. We got one.
oh,
Oh, sweetheart.
Mhm.
who's a cute girl?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, she
hunting
likes
Okay.
dog?
this.
Okay. She doesn't like the TV side of things. She just wants to go hunting.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about all that. Go back and lay down again. Okay, good girl. Yeah.
The biggest thing that's happened is we found out that Allie has a real misunderstanding of what a cryptid is, what animals are real and what animals are not. Are you aware that Allie
Like a narwhal type
oh,
thing. You back to that conversation again?
we are on that conversation. She
Okay.
honestly didn't think a narwhal was a real animal.
You can understand though, John, because
Thank you.
I mean, I know it's real. It's just that it looks
It's
like
a
it shouldn't
unicorn.
be. It looks like a unicorn, and we know unicorns aren't real. I've got little books for my daughters that we're reading right now, and there's some, creatures like that, unicorns, and I tell them, now these aren't real. But if I look at a narwhal and they're going to be like, well, why is that one real, Daddy? So it just
Right?
doesn't look like it fits, So I get it.
Well, maybe it's someone who's been obsessed with their ocean their whole life.
Yeah.
I've watched so many documentaries that, you know, I said it right that
Oh,
time.
you didn't?
Oh, darn it. I can't say that word correctly.
Documentaries?
I say
Right?
documentaries. Like I
Yeah,
say documentaries.
I
You
noticed
say
you
documentaries.
stumbled through that.
I do them both.
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
you say multiple things wrong.
I will
That's
say this, John, like you do a really good job of communicating. You don't and very often. And so when I'm listening, I go, man, he knows what he wants to say and he says it clearly, which is something to be proud of because it's really hard to sit and talk for like an hour and a half,
Mhm.
which is what you guys do regularly. And then when the camera turns on, this is something that I deal with all the time. When we're interviewing people or talking to people, if they have to film something, we turn the camera on and they forget their name. They can't even spell their
yeah.
own name. They get so
Mhm.
nervous, and we turn the camera on, and you're one take John. Like, fantastic. Be
Mm.
proud, buddy.
Yeah, I have this weird thing. It's like lack of concern about messing up on things and
Yeah,
a overdeveloped sense of confidence for no real reason. Those
that's
things
good.
sometimes cause problems, but in general, it works out pretty well for my job.
Well, I think confidence is something that most people wish they had in life. So for you to have it, I mean, that's amazing. And confidence comes from experience, right? I mean, you have to fail a little bit. You got to try stuff. You got to put yourself out there and then realize that everyone's just trying to make it every day. So,
Mm.
once you get confident in something, yeah, you don't have that nerves or the nervousness that comes from it. And, I've spoken in front of some really large groups before, and you talk about blacking out. But then you
Mhm.
come off of it and now it gets easier. Like speaking in front of 1,000 or 2,000 people in a room. I mean, that's like, oh man. And you come back from that adrenaline rush afterwards and you kind of are just like, oh man, you're just shaking a little bit. But then it gets easier and easier and it's really rewarding after a while.
Mhm.
When you're talking in front of a large crowd like that, do you ever find yourself in your head going, "Oh no, I've already started down this path. I don't have an
Oh yeah.
exit plan."
Yes,
Yep.
all
Oops.
the time.
Oops.
You're like, "I'm about to share some information that I'm not supposed to share. How do
Yeah.
I
Oops.
twist this?"
There needs to be an
Uh,
eject button, like, "No, no, 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 I don't wanna go down this road." During,
yeah.
Rendezvous when it was up in Minneapolis, it was 2 years ago, or was that last year? It was last year. We won, Sponsor of the Year award or Partner of the Year award, so it's this nice plaque, and I had to go up and give a speech in front of everybody, and I started talking about how things like conservation and groups like BHA can bring the left and right together, and
Uh-oh.
this is I was like, Get out, get out, get out now, get out, stop."
You're not wrong, but
Fair, I'm
that
not
Right,
wrong,
one
but it
right.
wasn't the right
could turn bad
audience.
so
Yeah,
fast.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hey, we
Oh,
sent you a package of dry cured meats. Did that arrive?
since Pheasant Fest?
Y
Oh,
It
yeah, like,
didn't
it
get
should have
there.
gotten there,
It
like,
should've gone there
this
today.
morning.
I didn't get it. If I didn't get it, it's possible Rob Burrell got it, and then he ate it already.
I'm texting Rob right after this.
He wouldn't do that.
Would he,
Yeah,
though?
I had a he would. He absolutely would. Yeah, and that's why we both love him and hate him at the exact same time.
We don't hate him, we love
Um,
Rob.
We
He
do
wouldn't
love
do that.
Rob.
It had your name on it.
it depends on the day. Yeah. No, I didn't get it. But is it new? Is it different than the last time?
It's more flavors of what we brought up from last time. It's all dry cured stuff. I sent you
Oh,
some jalapeno popper. I sent you some new pepperoni that we just made. I sent you a habanero mango, and I think I sent you a chocolate chili brown.
Mango or habanero
so
barbecue?
is that what I'm looking at on your desk right now between you 2? All the
This is
different
some
varieties
of
that I'm
them.
supposed to have?
This is the pepperoni, and this is
Okay.
something that I didn't send you because I'm selfish and we only have a very small amount of it. That is a red wine, Italian salami
Oh,
with peppercorns in it, and to this
Mhm.
day, I've probably made 20, 25 batches of dry cured stuff, somewhere in that range, and this is still the best I've made as far as texture and taste goes. I mean,
'Kay.
this
that's
a
fantastic.
major producer would be happy to put this out. This is good, but this is just good. That's my Mona Lisa.
Oh, your
All
Mona
right,
Lisa?
Allie, I'm gonna be just like everybody else listening and watching. Take a bite. Tell me what I'm missing.
Okay, so first of all, the smell in it is
Mhm,
fantastic, and normally I feel like you smell dry cure sausage, and it's not.
and it's still fantastic. I love the
Well,
smell of dry cured sausage
that's
even.
weird to
I
me.
know.
It's like it's literally like dirty fungusy feet.
Mhm, I love
We're
it.
just gonna sit on that. I feel like you need to eat something too, otherwise it's weird that I'm eating this and you're not.
I'll wait until you're done chewing so that you can talk while I'm eating.
Mhm.
No dead air. Look at
Mm,
us.
that's salty, like
What?
good salty.
That's
That's
not
why you
the
gotta bring the beer back. Most of your listeners right now say, "That's why we need the beer." Bring the beer back there. Yep.
To like taste in between, like in clean taste. No,
no, just to have in general.
like what I don't. I'm probably not the best person for this, which is funny that I'm saying that while I'm sitting on camera. But like, what am I supposed to describe? Like,
Flavor?
okay, it has like a touch of sweetness, but not very much. It's
Mhm,
very subtle. I don't like sweetmeats, so big fan of that. You can taste a little bit of the like wine aroma. It's not like a heavy wine flavor. It's just very subtle and just has a very solid traditional dry cure taste.
Yes.
It's nothing like weird, like a habanero barbecue. No,
Nope. Habanero barbecue
habanero mango.
mango.
That's where I'm trying to go. Or like we did a chocolate chili one, so it's not weird. It's just like if I were to go to Dylan's and get some dry cure, like I'd probably go grab this.
Did you hear the if I was to
Dang
go
it!
to
I have gotten so much better at not talking Southern. I've
every
really
once in
cut
a
back
while
since
it
moving
comes
back.
out.
No matter how hard you try, you talk Southern. I'm just gonna tell you. But I can't not talk Northern either.
I was
So
saying we're
people
both
tell me all the time, "Oh, you're that guy with that really strong accent from Minnesota." And I'm like, "Really?" Because when I hear people on TV, I feel like they sound like me. So I think you're the
yeah.
one that has the accent. That's what I tell them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not say that I've ever noticed you having a strong accent.
He
Oh,
just
I
said a
get
word that
called out
sounded
for that all the time.
strong.
Yeah.
Do you
He
have a
said,
specific
"Oh."
word?
I mean, just in general, like the vowels are just really, oh, they're drawn out.
Mhm.
I don't hear it when I say them, but I guess they're there. I don't know. But to me, it's just normal. I can't hear it in myself. Just
But
like I
that's the
can't.
thing, like, Northerners do the "oh," and, like,
Yeah,
Tennessee is
Minnesota,
"oh." Okay.
Minnesota.
So
Okay,
yeah,
here's how I say it. Minnesota. How do you say
Minnesota.
Minnesota? Say it again.
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
So,
Minnesota. Yeah,
That's close.
say the
it's pretty good.
restaurant, how do you Chipotle.
Oh, Chipotle.
Chipotle.
Okay, so back to your sausage because I'm curious. When you sent me that beautiful Valentine's gift with your dry cured
Yep.
sausage in a heart shape. Now, how does this meat differ from that?
So a lot of them
Mm,
are very similar. What I had sent you for that was some salami that I had made, just standard salami, and some pepperoni, as well as the Reuben with Jarlsberg cheese. But a
Okay.
lot of it is very similar in this vein. So we
So
just
this
sent
is
you different.
sweeter though. A little sweeter.
This no, this wouldn't be
mm,
sweeter than that.
No.
I don't tend to make a lot of sweet things. That even that habanero mango one you're gonna get,
Yeah.
a lot of the sweetness is eaten up by the starter culture.
mhm,
So the starter culture, when it actually starts working in the meat, it needs uh, dextrose, sugar, something like that to feed on. So it's consuming that, right? So it's going to cut down on a sweet level. We made a habanero barbecue, probably maybe the third or fourth batch we were doing, and we were shocked by how hot it was. And that was because it ate up most of the sugar from the barbecue and left just the
mhm.
habanero. So, yeah, not much of dry cured stuff is really, really sweet.
Okay. Can I ask you, as a listener to your podcast, um, I feel like every day John just gets to go in and play with meat and mix and match and make something fun out of it. What does a day look like at the office for John? Just because I'm curious and I think others might be too.
Yeah, okay, every day is different. Tuesday is the only day that we technically do recordings on, though. So we will set up Monday. We have a team meeting where I don't wanna say we decide, usually John and Patrick come in and they already know, like, what things they're gonna be recording for Tuesday, but we talk about it. We have a Microsoft Teams planner, and my rule is if the video is not listed on the Microsoft Teams planner, you do not record it. So it has to go on the planner first. So John does get to like go in and play around with things, but I've come in and kind of grab some control on that and gone, yes, but like not yet.
Have
Wait.
you ever seen a dog catcher? They have those big come-alongs. It's like
Yeah.
that. She just, like, kinda grabs me from a distance and pulls and
Pulls you back
redirects.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's yeah, we used to just film whenever, and it was pretty chaotic, so having, like, an actual film day every week helps tremendously,
But
and it
you don't
helps.
know you have to know what you're gonna be making before the camera turns on, and there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of equipment, there's tools, there's spices, there's meat, there's
Mhm,
temperature, it can't be frozen, it can't be warm, like, there's a lot that goes into making all of this stuff, so
mhm,
that's where I'm always looking at the stuff that you're working on, and I'm thinking, I feel like there's always something happening over there that you're experimenting with. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's usually a lot of things going on.
mhm,
As far as experimenting goes, we've got some things coming. Obviously, we're moving, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
closing down this office. We've already built the new office. In fact, Allie and I were just at the new place yesterday looking at our new studio kitchen, test kitchen, lots of things like that. So
Mhm.
we're waiting until we get up there to do a lot of stuff. So right now we're kind of focusing more on um, making sure that every Walton's branded product has at least a short video that just talks about the product and shows it. But once we get over there, we should have a bunch more of like the, quote unquote fun, crazy ones that we can do.
Mhm.
Yep.
Because right before we built this studio, we were next door in this room with just a little backdrop. And we shot almost all of the intro Meatgistics University videos, and
Mhm.
that's 40, 50 videos, something like that. And then a month after we did that, we were in here. And I always kicked myself for that. I'm like, why? Why didn't I just wait?
Yeah.
Would have been so much better in here. So we didn't want to do that again. So
Mhm.
we're pushing off some of this more interesting stuff until we get there.
Mhm.
Yeah, talking to Austin at Pheasant Fest too. We were going back down memory lane, and just I'm always kind of tinkering, not like you, but I've got a lot of meat, wild game, and I want to make different recipes. So then I'll search on Meatgistics, and there I get you and Austin, from so long ago, and I think, oh, how they've grown. Oh, some of those old videos they're still good. The content's still good, but you can tell just how far it's come. Which, like I just to kind of like take this to a really different dimension here. Like I grew up learning only from my grandpa and my dad, both my grandpas and my dad, so it was really hands on. Now, my dad might have an old recipe or something, but I'm searching on YouTube, I'm searching on Meatgistics, I'm watching videos, I'm looking at all this stuff listed out. We didn't have that years ago. It's just a different world in the meat making, meat processing, you know, library, I guess, of places that people can go search to learn.
Mm.
Yeah, everything used to be if you didn't know somebody, you had to go buy a book.
Yeah.
Now, those still absolutely have value. The art of crafting dry cured sausage is a
Mm.
I have a very well thumbed copy of that. There's another one, just basic home butchering. I have a very well noted copy on that. So there is still value to that, but it's so much easier to just go to Google and be like, how do
Yeah.
I,
Right.
and then anything,
Mhm.
basically anything is going to pop up.
Yeah. Then you have to trust the source, and that's a hard thing too. So that's where it's like I've eaten a lot of the stuff that you've made, John. I've sampled it. I trust you. If you say it's going to be good, and then I'll text you too on top of it. Is this really good? And you're like, no, go with this or this one. The Walton's Bold or something like that. Depending on the bird or the meat that I'm working with, it's good to know somebody. But I don't know. Like we talked about this a couple weeks ago, guys. Like when as a hunter, you work so hard to get that meat. You all the training or whatever the miles put in to get it, if it's a big game animal, if it's a bird, and there's a limited amount there. And so you just want to make sure that whatever you make with it turns out because you want to enjoy it because it's personal. It's earned meat. It's not something that you just went to the store and bought off the shelf. I mean, that as a hunter, every single bite, I cherish that. I don't like any of it going into the garbage can because it's something that is completely different than if I pressed a button and it showed up on my front door or I went to the store and picked it off the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in my opinion, at least, when we're talking about deer, elk, things like that, you're eventually going to get to a place where your initial monetary investment is covered and you're now getting meat cheaper than you would anywhere else. With Upland, I don't know that that ever really becomes like, if that ever really works out. I think you're always behind in Upland, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say even the same thing too. I mean, for a lot of deer hunters, I mean, if you think of, yeah, the license and if you're going to go out on public land and harvest a deer, depending on how much gas and whatever else to get to that location, you might have a few hundred or $1,000 in. But if you buy the land, I mean, just think of that hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're never going to get that back by, saving a few bucks on, or, you're never going to get that back by harvesting that many deer. You just can't.
Yeah, definitely not. But like you said, if you do it public lands, you can like it can be a cost-effective way to feed your family. I know
Sure.
people who do it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But with upland, you're usually getting fairly small amount of meat, unless we're talking about goose in certain areas in certain seasons. You can shoot almost as many as you want. Um, but there's not much meat on a pheasant. There's very little meat on a quail,
Sure.
yet we still
Hmm.
love going after them. And then so eating that is almost more like, "Hey, this has to be good." I paid a lot of money for
Yeah.
Yeah.
this pheasant
Right.
breast.
So is there
Well,
a
and
point
that
in
gets
history? Oh,
no, that just gets me back to my thought there, in that I'm watching what you're making, John and Allie and everyone there. I'm watching because I don't want to risk making something that I'm not going to like or my family won't like, because
mm,
when they love it, they're like, "Let's go hunting again. Can we
mhm,
get another deer? Can we get more pheasants?" And then I'm like, "Yes, absolutely." So I put so much more effort into every piece of wild game that I make because, one, it means a lot to me.
mhm,
Two, I want everyone to really love it as much as I do because I love every single aspect of the hunt, start to finish. And it ends with stories at the table while we're eating the wild game that we harvested.
mm.
What were you
Yeah.
saying?
Well, was there a point in history, like, I know there was a point in history where people would live off of deer, like, you would just go hunt. You go hunt to find your meat. Was that as much of a thing for upland game? Like, well, all of my meat is just gonna be from whatever birds I can find.
No, Travis, I'll let you answer, but I would say no because investment of just a shotgun shell for a bird versus a shotgun slug versus a deer, like, upland has, in my mind, always been at least more of a it's a weird way to say it, but like a gentleman's event,
Mhm,
right? Like, it's about the harvesting and the meat, ultimately, obviously, but it's also more of, I wanna go out and work with my dog, I wanna be
mhm,
with, you know, people who enjoy the same things I do,
mhm.
whereas for me, at least, deer hunting, if I ever get to go elk hunting, that is more about, I want that meat.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you go back in time, and I mean, this is generations, you
Mhm,
can see there are some old photos in historical books or museums of black and white photos of birds just lined up,
mm,
hundreds of birds on fences or wires where they would hang them. And based on kind of the old stories that came out of it, prairie chicken, specifically in the Great Plains, used to be so plentiful that they said you could hit them with a stick,
oh my
and
god,
that's how many there were.
that's cool.
And so that was an important part of the diet, the food that
Mm,
people ate when they were settling on the Great Plains. Those birds were said to be just everywhere, and it gave people a lot of protein when things were tough. So, um, based on those photos and seeing that many birds,
mm,
you could eat quite a bit of meat off of just birds and survive along with whatever you grew, in
mm,
addition to a big game animal. And so I don't think you had to necessarily have slugs or, bird shot back then to be able to harvest the birds that
for sure.
were as plentiful, which is kind of a sad thing now when some of these states don't even have that bird anymore. That bird might be protected in certain states, don't have a hunting season, lesser prairie chicken, greater prairie chicken. I mean, there's different upland species that are just so threatened right now because their habitat has been so limited that they aren't there anymore. And I think a lot of upland bird hunters, that'll travel from the East Coast, they'll talk about, what it means to them to go out and hunt and why they continue to do it, or hunters down south, talking about the good old days of quail hunting and how it's just a few generations removed. They still do it, they still have the opportunities, but they're so limited. And then you really take for granted living where I do and being able to go and harvest a pheasant within 10 minutes of my home.
Mm,
just what we have, because some parts of the country, they just don't have it anymore.
mm,
So we have Allie and I go every year on a Walton's hunt. We go out to Western Kansas, and down here, a prairie chicken stamp is a $0 stamp. You can just add it. So I always add it. Never seen one before, and it was this year I saw my first one. It flew directly overhead, and we were probably a mile from the county line of where it was legal versus where I was, which was not legal.
Ah,
So
well, good for you for knowing what it was though when it came by, because a lot of times if you don't see something, how would you know?
I
uh
did not recognize it when it flew,
oh, okay. Yeah, I'll
but
take that compliment, I
yeah,
guess. But yeah, no, I was upset. I was like, if we were a mile north, I would have gotten my first prairie chicken because
Yeah.
I've wanted one for a long time now because I want to experiment with that meat.
Mm,
I've never done it. I've heard all sorts of interesting things about it, and I just
Mhm.
wanted to get my hands on some.
Yeah, and that's also part of the hunt for me is I've done a lot of hunts that are in really remote places, and I find sometimes that these birds taste different depending on where they are living, the habitat, the food that they're eating. I heard not horror stories about ptarmigan meat, but these birds being a dark meat that isn't that great, and they were absolutely delicious when I ate them. And it could have been the location, but we cooked them up on the top or, 3/4 of the way up a mountain in Alaska. And these birds were living on the tundra, and there were 10 different kinds of blueberries. And every step you couldn't take without stepping on a blueberry. And these birds were full of it. So it had like this blueberry flavor to the meat. I can't describe it. All I know is the rain's coming down, it's cold, and we cook up these hot birds over a pan on the side of a mountain, and I've never eaten something so delicious in my entire life. So depending on where you're at, these birds can just bring out those flavors, and it's always different and better when you're eating it right out there where you harvested it, which I find to be just, oh, such a good part of the hunt when it comes to bringing the full circle in the food.
And diet's obviously an enormous part of it, and certainly for deer,
Mhm.
whether everybody has their own line of what they think is most ethical or what they're willing to do. But in my experience, generally a younger buck is going to taste better than a
Mhm.
7, 8-year-old buck. Do we have the same thing with a lot of the upland species? I mean, I don't know enough to know that.
Typically, most upland birds are gonna live about 6 months. That's kind of the
Oh,
average life cycle for most birds. They don't make it a full year. There's a few that do, and that's why a hen can lay 10, 12 eggs, 15 eggs, and bring the population right back the next year. So, it's not, in my opinion, very noticeable. Um, but you talk about the deer, and yeah, I mean, that is a a big thing, depending on where you hunt. If you're near agriculture, there's parts of Minnesota, and those deer don't have access to corn or soybeans or wheat. And so it definitely makes a big difference where you're hunting as to how that meat's going to taste. The other thing that it blows my mind, but for some reason, wild game has this connotation or this feel to it that because it's a wild animal, we need to cook it just a little bit longer to make sure it's safe to eat. And it ruins it. It ruins the meat. And it makes me so mad because it's good meat, but because you cook it just a little bit longer, now it's gamey. That's where the gamey flavor and taste comes from because you overcooked it and it's no longer any good. And now it gets a bad rap when most of it is delicious if it's cooked correctly.
Well, that's definitely some of the gaminess, right? Like, the overcooking definitely plays into it, but there are other factors that go into something being gamey or not. They've done studies before where they've taken lean cuts of beef and similar cuts of venison, had them both butchered by a professional butcher, had them cooked by professional cooks, and I think it's something ridiculously small, and I think it's less than 10% of, people that they tested could tell any difference between the 2.
Huh.
Um, but like I said, it's not just the cooking process. It is absolutely also how the animal is taken care of after it's been harvested.
Right.
Right? Like we've
Right.
talked about this a million times, and I don't see it as much anymore, or I don't see it at all anymore. We might have talked about this when we were up in KC, though. I think the person who throws their deer on top of their hood and ties it down and goes and shows all their friends, I don't think that's really a thing anymore. But I said that and got pushback from other people who are like, "Oh, no, yeah, I still know
Oh
people
yeah,
who do
it's still a thing. It's still a thing that blows my mind because it happens up here in Minnesota. We have
Mhm.
opening weekend and roughly 500,000 deer hunters head into the forest. And on the way home, every time I've got a 6-hour drive back to where I live from where I deer hunt. And I see deer on trailers, I see deer on hoods of cars, I see deer on top of minivans, I see them on racks that are on the back of the vehicle. Some of them are gutted, most of them are gutted. But
They
every
do
once in a while,
one
you
we
see
know.
one that isn't, and I'm thinking,
Oh,
who's gonna eat that? Who is
no.
gonna eat that meat? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. What a waste. You just wasted it. I've seen it. And then some days it's 55, 60 degrees. We have our season in November up here, and there's a lot of times where it's below zero. There's also been times where it's 50, 60 degrees. And you'd be crazy to be driving. Would you go to the store and buy a bunch of meat and then put it on the hood of your car and drive around when it's 60 degrees out? Like, what are you thinking? What in the world are you honestly thinking?
Yeah,
I just, oh, I can't. So, yeah, you're right. That's where I think people can go really, really, really wrong. How quickly the shot? What did the deer do after the shot? Were they running? Was there adrenaline? Was there blood pumping? I mean, there's some of these factors that go into it. Then where did it get shot? Did some of that, the guts get hit in it? Did that go into the meat? I mean, you talk about the wash that you guys have, John, in cleaning out the meat beforehand. I asked you, I think, how long should a deer hang or how long should a cow hang? Because we have a meat pole at our deer camp and there's a certain age where you want to hang them, right? I don't remember what you said it was, but do you remember, John?
so I've done both. I've hung for 4 days. So let me back up. I've hung for a single day. I've hung for 4 days, 7 and 14. I don't personally think that it makes a huge difference, and I know a lot of people are gonna fight me on that. Um, but in my opinion, from 7 to 14, there's no reason to. Like,
After
if
the
you
7
really
days.
wanna go for the tenderization effect of that, you're not getting you're not getting enough that it's noticeable from 7 to 14 in
That's
my
what you're
book.
hoping for the the
And the
day
enzymes are
increases.
starting to break down, and it's making it a little bit more tender, but kind of to Travis's point, if we're cooking it correctly.
Shouldn't be a problem.
It shouldn't be. And that's where I sometimes wonder, you see deer hanging on a meat pole, and then I look at the thermometer and I think, what's the protocol here? I mean, if you're at a butcher shop, I mean, and you guys specifically are very aware what the temperature is of the meat that you're grinding, that you're making, that you're working with at all times. You've got a controlled place there. So do butcher shops. But us hunters are out there and we've got deer hanging on a pole, and at night it cools down, but maybe during the day it warms up. Are we risking anything? I'm asking you, the expert here, John.
Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. It's less likely, right? Because we're out, in, an environment like a deer camp. It's a little bit less likely than, like, on a farmland, but there's E. coli in the soil. Like, it's just
Mhm.
going to interact with that meat. So, we definitely are risking something there, letting it just hang. My advice is if you're in the 50s during the day, you're gonna hurt your meat if you're just
Yeah.
hanging it just to hang it. Now, there are also, like, some, and we talked about this too, like that guy who straps it to his hood, that legitimately may be his only option, right? I would recommend that bring a couple coolers big enough and quarter it right there and get it into those coolers, but for whatever reason, that might not be an option. So you have to do what you have to do. But when we're talking about things like we can control, like, are we gonna hang this for even 4 days in 50-degree weather? Well, you shouldn't.
Right. Right.
Yes, it's gonna get cold enough at night, but the day with the heat, and then we've got flies. You're begging for, problems.
Yeah.
Problem.
And the thing that same thing applies with birds too. A lot of people will hang birds, and I've gone back and forth on it. I've tried it both ways, but I've also had some birds that I didn't like the taste of it after hanging it because I didn't know where a pellet went through and hit a part of that bird that brought a lot of like green and crud out of it. And I didn't know that when it was hanging. And then when I ate it, I was like, oh, dang it. Had I just cleaned it right away, I would have washed it out and we'd have been just fine. But
Now
instead,
that deer and wild game rinse you were talking about,
yeah.
you get it in a spray bottle, you can keep it in your truck, you can bring it to your
Mhm.
blind, spray it on the entry and the exit wound. It's a mix of ascorbic acid, a couple other things that basically act as an antibacterial and antifungal.
Mhm.
And if you are transporting that deer long distance, I would say that that's an absolute necessity because, to your point, yep, I came in through, let's say one of the hind ribs, but I might have nicked an intestine or a gut, and now that is just in there with your meat, and you've done nothing to mitigate it. And then we're going to drive it 3 hours back to your house. It's just a bad plan.
Mm.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder too, and now I'm interviewing you guys, it seems like, but as long as I've got you on the horn here, let's just fire away. I am old school and I walk up to the deer, take out my knife, start gutting it. I don't necessarily, I mean, that's just what I did as a kid. I've gutted more deer than I can count and watched my dad, watched my grandpas, watched my uncles, watched other people at home with. And, now I go in. I don't have, fancy gloves. I don't have like a clean area. I just go gut the deer. I have blood all over my hands and then I wash them off in the snow or the grass afterwards and find some water and I move on with my life. Am I risking anything by not wearing any sort of protective gloves in that situation?
I mean, sure, to a certain degree, a pair of nitrile gloves is something that you want when you're gutting a deer.
Tell me
Uh,
more. Tell me why,
well,
Johnny.
if you have a cut in your hand and that deer had, you know, anything wrong with it, you potentially just introduced that to your bloodstream. Now, is that likely? No. Have I worn gloves on every deer I've gutted? No. But best practice would be to have a pair of nitrile gloves in there.
Huh. All right, now
You
you
don't
got me
sound
thinking.
convinced. He's not gonna take my advice
I
on
don't
that.
know.
Like,
I
I
mean,
could tell by his huh.
no, no, no. I'm just curious. What's the risk here? That's always what I have to kind of ask myself. What's the risk?
It's
Yeah.
slight. It's slight.
Yeah.
It's not much of a
Mhm.
risk, but it is I mean, it would be a ridiculous amount of things that would have to happen, and being honest here, I don't even know if it's technically possible, but if somehow you sever part of that spinal column and that deer had CWD,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I have to believe that that is communicable through an open wound on you and it's spinal fluid, so, yeah,
So there's
but what's the problem with wearing a set of gloves? Are you just anti-glove?
No, I just don't always have them with. I got a lot of other responsibilities. I gotta, I've got now multiple kids coming with. I've got all kinds of stuff I'm hauling out, and I usually end up about a mile or two into the wilderness on some big piece of public land, and you just forget things sometimes. If there's a lot of snacks, there might not be gloves.
snacks.
I
Mhm.
don't.
Right.
Things happen.
So, if, you're bringing your kids hunting with you,
Yeah. Yep.
you're a mile deep and, your kid got, his first deer this year, I believe?
He did. Yep. Yep.
Mm.
What'd he
Cool.
shoot it with?
243 rifle.
Okay. From how
Mhm.
far away?
110 yards.
Nice, good shot for how do you wanna say how old he is?
10.
So, that's a good shot for a
Yeah, feels
ten-year-old.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, my oldest is 10, and then, my other boy is 9, and then my girls are 7 and 3, and they've been coming with me since a long, long time ago. I remember bringing my oldest out when he was, I think, 2 or 3 into the turkey
Oh,
blind for his first one.
Nice.
Yeah, and I remember we snuck out there in the dark, and I carried him out there in the dark, and we climbed into the blind and we got quiet for just a little bit and I went and off in the distance. Gobble, 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 gobble. He could hear the turkeys up in the roost, and he thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he didn't have enough patience to wait for them to fly down from the roost. We were out of there before sunlight, and that was our first hunt together. It lasted 15 minutes, but he heard the
Oh,
bird, sparked something in him, and fast forward 7 years, and he's sitting over his first deer, dropped it on the spot. He's been practicing with a BB gun. Then we went to a 22, then to a 20 gauge, and his shot has just he's just probably one of the safest gun handlers that I know. And I've hunted with more people than I can count probably over the last 15 years of producing TV. There's a lot of people that need to go back to gun safety training.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. They really honestly forget what can happen. Uh, Sidebar here, I just interviewed somebody on our podcast that had their gun explode on him last week and blew his hand to pieces.
oh
And
no.
it's just a reminder of what can happen out there when things go wrong. He believes, then the doctors do too, that he's going to regain all feeling in all of his fingers, which is amazing because he sent me the photo and we're not posting it online because I think Instagram would censor it. So it's that bad. Um, but I go to my kids now and just how proud I am of them for their gun safety and taking everything um, so seriously and important because that stuff matters. And they're great bird hunters. My oldest has basically harvested almost everything to this point. He got his first turkey when he was 6, and he's gotten one every year. We're gonna head out here in a couple weeks for Minnesota's opener. But yeah, he is a very good shot, and I had no doubts that he was going to make a good shot. And I was sitting basically as tightly next to him as I could, and these deer walked out, and the adrenaline just kicks in. Right, this kid, I go because the deer were feeding out in this field. I wasn't concerned about him running. I said, "It's okay. Just take your time. We're going to practice taking a shot. Hold it right on him and we're going to keep the safety on, but I want you to put it right on his chest." And I'm whispering in his ear and I'm basically hugging him at this point. And he's got the gun out the window of the blind. And I said, "Can you hold it steady enough to make a safe shot?" And he tried. He goes, "No." And he's breathing. And I go, "Okay, take a deep breath and try again." And then I go, "Can you make a safe shot where it's on it the whole time?" He goes, the gun is shaking too much. I can't do it, Daddy." And I said, "That's okay." And I gave him just the biggest bear hug ever. And I held him so tight that he couldn't move. And I said, "Try it now." And he put it on it and he goes, "Yeah, I can do it, Daddy. I can do it." So I said, "All right, when the deer turns broadside and you're ready, I want you to squeeze it off and I'm going to hold you just this tight, buddy." And he goes, "Okay, I'm ready." The deer turn, shot rings out. Down goes his first deer. And just like you see on those videos where kids get the first one, or I'm sure you can remember, John, your first one, or
Yeah.
Allie, I don't know if we've all been there. And it's just the adrenaline takes over. And we got it, Daddy. We got it, Daddy. And he was so proud of that deer. And I just don't even have the words to explain how proud I am of it. My dad was actually sitting in there too, and he didn't have to say anything, just the look on his face. The three of us to share that together. And yeah, it's just such a memorable thing. And we had a steak from it just the other night, and my boys would usually choose the venison over the beef. And that's just the way that they like it. And I there's a lot of times where how I make it, and I've shared this recipe because I think it's the simplest recipe for a backstrap of a deer or an elk. But I just put olive oil over it, and then the Walton's Ultimate Steak and Roast Rub seasoning. And the key to it is just that olive oil seems to just hold in. I don't know what olive oil does, John. Maybe Allie, you can help too, but it just those two things. That's all I do. and then I make sure the steak is air temperature. I put it on a hot grill, and as soon as it hits, and I've got the thermometer, the digital thermometer, the second it hits, I believe it's 120 degrees. The second it hits that, I take it off
Yeah.
Mm.
and then I let it sit for
Mm.
5 minutes. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. You can look at it if you want, but I take it off, I let it sit, and then I slice into it. And the key there is just do not overcook it. And everybody that's ever had it, it's been like, oh my gosh. If you're off by a couple of degrees overcooking, I don't know. It's
Oh,
just
yeah,
it's
no,
a
it makes
different, it's
a
a
huge
completely
difference.
different meat.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
makes a
that's
huge difference.
my simple recipe. And we made it back at camp that night with the tenderloins. And oh gosh, everybody. And he was so proud because he provided the meat for
Oh,
dinner that night.
that's so sweet.
That's an awesome feeling, and I really do think kids who grow up hunting and providing something to the family like that get a little bit extra kick of confidence because,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
even when I was a little kid, there were times where I'm like, I mean, I do chores here, like, but what
Mhm.
else am I really,
What do I
doing
really
with
do
this
here?
family?
Yeah.
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 So if a kid was like, "Well, we're eating something I made,"
Mhm.
that makes a huge difference.
Mm.
Um, I did wanna ask, how thick are you cutting your deer steaks?
I don't cut them. That's the thing. I leave the whole like I might be a foot long and it's just the backstrap. I
So
clean
you're
it up.
not cutting them into medallions, you're just
Nope,
okay.
nope. I've done that before and I have other recipes with that, but I just leave the whole log. Just leave it as is. And I think that's the key is you can dry that meat out so quickly or overcook it so quickly if if you cut it into medallions or thinner pieces. Then, I mean, you're putting it on a hot flame for a very, very, very short amount of time. Otherwise, you're ruining the meat.
Are you flipping it?
One time.
Okay, and are you like,
Mm.
are we talking gas or electric stove? What are we talking?
I've done it over charcoal. I've
Okay.
done it over gas. I've done it on a pellet grill. The
Mm.
key is the temperature. Do not overcook it. Once
And are
it
you
hits that
doing
temperature
if you're
internally,
doing
what's
it
that?
in like a cast iron, are you just trying to get that cast iron as hot as it'll get?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense. I've smoked whole backstraps before,
Mm.
um, but I've never cooked one
I
over
usually grill
deep
it.
heat.
I usually grill it. Yep,
Okay.
that's my go-to on it.
Well, I'll
Mm.
I'll give that a shot. And 120, you pull it, so it's gonna be 125. For
Yep.
anyone who thinks that that's not an important part of the cooking process, I challenge you, next time you're cooking any ribeye, KC strip steak, something like that, cook 2 of them, cut into
Mm.
one of them immediately and wait 5 minutes, and then see the difference on what is on the plate. There will be so
Mm.
much more juice on the plate that you cut as soon as it comes off the grill. That moisture, that, uh it's not blood, but, that will reabsorb into the steak.
Right.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
if you just
letting it rest is such a key component to a good steak. It doesn't
Mm.
matter if it's a beef or venison, it makes a big difference. And I also think too, just starting out at air temperature instead of having a really cold piece of meat,
Yeah.
that can be a big difference too in just having a good, well-cooked steak. And when I
so
say well
I'm
cooked, I mean not like cooked too long.
yeah, nobody wants a well done
Perfectly.
steak. Well, some people do. I
Yeah.
just think there's
I
something
can't
wrong.
understand that. I can't trust that person.
It take
Accurate.
it takes all kinds, though. Everyone's allowed to like whatever steak they want. I will
Mm.
think differently of you, but you're allowed to.
Yeah.
When you
Mhm.
said bring it up to room temperature, now I do that. I've always done that. That was the way I was taught to cook when I was younger. I've been reading a lot of Italian cookbooks, not a lot of. I've read a few Italian cookbooks
You
recently.
can read?
She taught me. It was like
Oh,
when she first
Allie,
got here,
that's
she's
sweet.
like, "No, this is
It was
not
a part of the
okay."
contract. I had to.
Hooked on phonics worked for me. Um, so, in that one the few things that is very interesting to me is, 1, they never mix onion and garlic in the same thing they're cooking. It is either garlic or onion, you do not add them both.
Hmm.
I've been
Is there a
making a
reason?
I've the flavor, they apparently are, like, warring flavors changing, they go against each other.
Mm.
I've been making a red sauce that I learned from my very Italian cooking family since I was a little kid, and I've always added red sauce and or I'm sorry, I've always added garlic and onion and saute them. I tried only garlic for the first time like a month ago. We had a guy here have some medical things going on, so I made dinner for them. And after I tried it, I texted Courtney, his wife, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to give this to you. Like, this might be the best red sauce I've ever made. Like, I know I said I'd cook for you guys tonight, and I will bring it over, but it's going to be begrudgingly. Like, I don't want to give this up." So uh, that was very interesting to me and has changed how I cook certain things now. But the other thing that is in there, and it made me look up other things, is cooking things right out of the fridge. And
Mm,
I can't believe it, but the freezer. Okay.
mm.
There are,
Frozen?
yeah, there are well known and respected chefs who say that letting it come up to room temperature is basically useless.
Huh.
And some of them have now started cooking things right out of the freezer, like
Frozen,
cooked
a
meat.
solid chunk. I wonder though if, like, and I don't claim to be an expert in any meat cooking or preparation. I would say my wife is 10 times the cook I am. I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy.
Sure.
So I'm always willing to learn something, but my stuff is basic. I mean, that that is as basic as cooking gets. You just sprinkle on some seasoning, throw it on the grill, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I wonder though if, because in my opinion, overcooking wild game is such a huge error that if it's frozen in the middle, you just aren't going to overcook, and therefore you're saving yourself the risk of overcooking it.
So yes, that is their theory, is that by the time the inside is, at whatever temperature you want, the outside will be perfect. And because we have cold basically radiating from the inside, it's preventing uh like the outside few layers from getting too overdone. Right? So you will have almost like a reverse sear where it's nice crust and then very even pink throughout. Now, I still haven't mustered up the guts to try it because my meat is too precious to me.
Okay.
But at some point, I will try cooking a frozen steak.
So
Yeah,
I similar but different. I kind of accidentally did that this week. I started like I usually will choose like 3 meals for the week and I'll eat the same breakfast, same lunch, same dinner and just do a big meal prep. So this week I found a recipe for like it was like a cauliflower stir fry rice thing but had shrimp in it. Don't normally eat a lot of shrimp.
Right.
So the first night that I cooked it, thawed the shrimp out and it was fully cooked already. Um Added it in at the end so it was just like slightly seared. Second night, I was feeling lazy and I was like, "Ah, screw that. We're just going to throw the frozen shrimp straight into the pan." So much better. Is that just luck of the draw?
It was pre-cooked.
Pre-cooked.
Yeah.
So it just makes it
Yeah. It's a
okay.
very different thing.
It's like we could be onto
Yeah.
something here.
No,
Ah,
no.
so close.
One of the
Oh,
things that, if I could jump in, one of the things that I love about going to hunting camps and hunting with a lot of different people is that I really like when they cook the game that we harvest, because I'm always looking for the next great recipe and I love
Mhm,
to see how people make it. So
mhm.
that's something. Like 2 weeks ago, I was at a wild game dinner. I spoke at the wild game dinner, and there was 25 different birds, animals, whatever harvested that were brought in different dishes. And I'm like, how did you get a goose to be that tender? Oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. And then I wanted the recipe and I asked the lady that was dishing it up. And I first said it like, can I get the recipe? And she's like, haha. I came back later. I'm like, can I get the recipe for that? And she's like, mm-hmm. I don't think she wanted to share the recipe. I was just blown away that she wouldn't share the recipe with me. Like, that is to get a Canadian goose to taste like that. I was like, "Oh my goodness," but they hold it so dearly sometimes that,
Mhm,
it's a pride thing.
my grandmother was a great cook, and everybody wanted to learn how to cook from her, especially all the girls in the family. So it wasn't until after she died that they realized that she had slightly altered what she told every one of them. So it wasn't as good as what she would make. And it took
Really?
them
That's
finding her
amazing.
recipe card book,
Uh-huh.
and they were like kind of not arguing, but deciding who would get what. They would look at it and be like, wait, she always told me to use, tarragon here, not blah blah blah. someone else would be like, "Well, she told me," so they eventually figured out that my grandmother was lying to everybody so that
Bless her.
things would still come back to her.
That used to be such a big thing, and now maybe it's because like, we have, like, Pinterest and stuff like that. They were
Yeah.
like, "You have a good recipe," we just send it, like, share all the things. But yeah, grandparents, it was like, "This is, like, the secret
Yep.
family recipe." We had a pumpkin bread recipe that forever was like, "You don't share this," and then I one day was like, "No, I want everybody to make this. This is the best."
So
Is it our
you
generation, do you think? Is it our generation being different? Because I remember this similar type of thing with my dad, and, he worked so hard to perfect this breakfast sausage recipe and the brat
Mhm.
recipe, and so that
your
was like
pops
his.
were very good.
Thank you.
Your
Thank you.
family
Thank my
was.
dad for that. I still don't know how to make them. He does not share that, honestly. And people are like, "Hey, can we get in on the sausage making?" And I'm like, "Well, about that."
I'm
So
not
Only if
even
I can
invited.
too.
I'm hoping I get the invite again this year because that's all my dad, and it's a invite only type thing, and he's very protective of it. But when we have Sausage Fest, like it's a weekend. It starts Friday and it doesn't end till Sunday, and we'll make. I think the most we made one year was like 750 pounds.
That's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
Yeah, like it's quite an ordeal.
Like a big
But I remember making it when I was like I vividly remember making it back on the farm, and my parents were hog farmers, so we had the best hogs available, right? And then when you got a deer, that combo of the pork and the venison going into the breakfast sausage and into the brats, and the recipe has evolved over the last couple of decades to what it is today. But I remember making it back then. I remember the smells that went into it, the seasonings, and just being like, "Oh," in the first batch. We mixed up a 50-pound batch of it, and then you always cooked a little before anything went to the smoker or whatever it might be, and the first batch of it was just like, mm. And every time you made a batch, you had to taste it first. You had to cook some, and
Mhm.
I still I still remember every single time we make it going back to the farm all those years ago. And yeah, I don't know why I got on this thought right now, but I love experimenting with it. I love making it, and I love learning from other people about how they make the different wild games.
Well,
Mhm.
so first of all, that's awesome to hear because we like to think part of what we do or part of what is done with what we do is bring people closer together. Like
Mhm.
there are lots of families that have traditions like that. Like we're going to get together and process what we've
Mhm.
harvested.
Mhm.
And it's nice to know that that's getting passed down to younger generations. Like anytime someone posts a family video or family picture to Meatgistics and it's showing the little kids with their hands in the meat
Mhm.
or, working the stuffer or whatever, that's always a nice warm feeling because you're
Mhm.
like, yes,
Mhm.
all right, someone's going to keep doing this. But you've said twice just other people. A question I had for you, and other than Ron Shera, because
Yeah.
you don't know until you hang around Minnesota with Ron Shera how famous that guy is.
Mm.
Like, every single person is like, "Oh, I watched you when I was, growing up with my dad." Who's
Mhm.
the most famous guy that you've brought out either hunting or fishing?
Mm.
Dale Earnhardt Jr., maybe?
Oh, wow.
Um,
That's a
the
pretty
coach
big
of the coach of the Minnesota Vikings,
which one?
um,
Do you remember?
Mike Zimmer.
Oh,
So
okay.
so he had a tradition on draft day every year. He would go turkey hunting because by the time the draft day came around, his work was done. He just had to show up to the draft that night. So every year that was his tradition is he would go turkey hunting. So he and I went out to this spot, and we snuck out early in the dark, and we got in under this big ridge, and there was probably like 15 jakes and gobblers total with a bunch of hens up there, and it was just like like, oh gosh. And we're both leaned up right next to each other as tight as possible at the base of this tree, talking about whispering about life and football and hunting, and that's a passion that he shares, that we share. And um right as the birds are about to come off the roost, a helicopter comes buzzing like just over treetop height. and it literally flushes everything out of all the trees and totally busts up the hunt. And we ended up not getting a bird after being in the most perfect possible position for the bird. So, yeah, that was the hunt that I shared with Mike Zimmer. We do a lot with different sports teams up here
Mm.
in the state, and I took this is probably well, wait, 2012 in Minnesota. We have a fishing opener, and we have a closed season, and then it opens up in May. And there's been a tradition that goes back to Walter Cronkite, or I don't remember. We have a Time magazine of the Minnesota governor holding a fish on fishing opener from so long ago. It's just been a tradition that is maintained since forever. And the governor goes fishing on the opener. And so it's always a big deal who's going to go, who's going to guide the governor. So in 2012, I was the governor's fishing guide, and we opened up the season in the state on my home waters because back then I was a full-time fishing guide that just started television production. So my community voted that I should be the guide when we hosted them. So we've had a lot of athletes on the water that we work with. We work with the Minnesota Wild, other organizations in town to do charitable fishing events. So I fish with a lot of different professional athletes in the state. Sometimes you just become friends with them. Um, a, a good friend of mine right now that I fish with regularly is Carlos Correa from the Minnesota Twins. So he lives down in Texas during the off season, but the man just wants to fish all the time. So we talk ball, but we talk a lot of fishing, and he's learning a lot because he grew up swinging a bat, and that's all he knew. And so teaching this grown man how to fish and the joy from every catch is very similar to my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old, and watching them, and it's very similar to John catching his fish. So it's fun for me to be of all these years of being a fishing guide and the hundreds and hundreds of people that I've taken fishing over the years, and maybe thousands, I don't know. It's been a wonderful journey. And everybody that I've taken out, I mean, the different stories. John, we've fished together several times, and it's just some of the best experiences. When you're on the water with somebody out there, you get to, I don't know, you just connect, right? And we talk about this all the time. Remember when the storm came in and we were stranded on the island?
Yep.
When you're out there in the elements and you go through these things with people, you're in it together. And it's usually the crappiest experiences that you remember the most.
The best. Hmm.
The storm came in, we all hid on the island, and I was catching bass hand over fish right before that. I then went on to not catch another fish the rest of that day and still count it as a top 5 all day fishing, like, because I laughed so much. I was with great people, and we were just having a blast on this gorgeous lake. Now,
Hmm.
you're
Mhm.
aware that Allie is coming to Wiley Point this year, yes?
I'm very excited about this, alley. I'm
Can be a
very
good time.
excited. Yeah.
We
It
are gonna
will
have
be it will
blast.
be yeah, it will be my number one goal to make sure you catch a muskie larger than John's.
Oh, I would love that.
That's unlikely. I was reviewing all of your, pictures of all your trophy fish on your website, and I'm not sure you've ever caught a muskie bigger than my muskie.
Oh, but if we got a group
Oh.
effort going, we combine
Oh.
all of our fishing talents together, and by that I mean my lack of any sort of fishing
Right,
talent,
you bring
and
his down.
bring his down, but then add everybody else because everybody else is gonna wanna see me win over you.
Oh, that's accurate, especially after
100%.
how I handled winning everything on the last day last year.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was not gregarious, although I did
Mhm.
take all of my winnings and buy drinks at the bar. So that went very, very
People
far.
were not mad at you for winning after you were so gracious in success, for sure.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. But so Allie will be coming up. We're gonna
Mhm,
have an absolute blast. I
mhm.
cannot wait. I look forward to that trip every year.
It's a
But
highlight, man.
it
It is a
it
highlight.
it's just a special place in the world. I've been lucky enough to get to travel to, I've been New Zealand, Fiji, all across the Bahamas, and that really is one of
Rub
the
it in, John.
prettier
Rub it
places.
in.
What's that?
Just rub it in that you've been to all those places.
Yeah, I've been lucky to get to do those things.
That's
But
awesome.
that is one of the prettiest places that I've been to in North America.
That's gonna be a good
It's
time.
paradise, man. It is a special
We need to
place. Did you want to talk about? I know any opportunity you get to talk about your trophy, John.
Mm.
I
Well,
assume you wanted to
we're
dabble
gonna have
here
that
again.
moment here.
I don't think a day
Okay.
has gone by since that happened that I have not heard this story or seen something that has reminded me of the story. And by that I mean there's a picture on your desk that is not you.
Mm.
It's you, but it's not you.
My sister had her daughter swap her face onto my face for that picture of me holding the fish.
Yeah.
Fun
Mhm.
fact, if you combine my sister's face with my face, we end up looking like Sloth from the Goonies. It is not a flattering picture, I will tell you that much.
It's
I want
from
to
a
see
distance,
it.
you can't tell.
I'll send it
So,
to you.
like, one day I was like, "Oh, it's a picture of John with this fish," whatever, walk up, and I'm talking to him, and I was like, "What? No, this is not right. There is something wrong with this picture." So, like, it's there every day. There's a constant reminder. It's like, what is it that, statistically every American thinks about certain things once a day or, back when the, like, "This is my Roman Empire"
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
thing?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's, like,
So, my fish with my sister's face swapped with me is your
it's
Roman
become my
Empire.
Roman Empire.
Okay. Jeez.
I hate that.
Yikes. Alright, now when we listen to this, I want
Hold
everyone to pay special attention to
Mhm.
the noise that's made and try and figure out if it's my excitement or Travis's
Mhm.
excitement. Alright,
Okay.
so I'm gonna hit play.
Me, right? Yep. There you go. That's it. That's it. Whitey, right out of the way. Oh, it's a good one. Oh, you're good. Just okay. Just enjoy the ride. Out of the trolling motor, though. Out of the trolling motor. Woo! Woo! That's a good one. He's yours!
So, tried to cut
The
that off
last
right
thing you
before that.
said.
I tried to cut that off right before that.
You didn't though.
I didn't though. I didn't though. The "Hoo, hoo," I think is me.
100%. That's John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That was you. 100%.
'Cause I
I
started
screamed
thinking it was you
afterwards.
for a while, but then you can hear
No.
you say
No,
right
no.
after, "Oh, it's a good one."
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it's
that high pitch was yours. I've made a lot of high pitches, and I would admit to it if it was mine, but I can't. That was you. Yep.
you can't take that one. But yeah, so that was the video of me catching my
Did Travis
trophy
have the
fish.
net?
Yeah,
It's blurred just enough
I
that
know.
I was
That's
like,
what
"I think that's Travis," but
I think it was
could be
taken
wrong.
on a iPhone, and then when it was sent to my Android, like, they do that
Oh,
weird
yeah,
or they
it's
used to do that weird, whatever thing that makes
If
them
I'd have
bad.
known you were gonna play some videos, I could have airdropped it to you, and you'd have had that in HD, my man.
No,
man.
I have a Samsung. There's
We'll
no such
GoPro
thing
this next
as
year. Just the whole
yeah,
fishing trip, just put it on you
yes.
or hat or whatever needs to happen.
'Cause at one point, I
Yep.
was fishing in a boat with, your buddy Bill, who
Mhm.
also has his own hunting and fishing shows, the head of Onyx Fishing, and
That's who videoed your catch, Ben.
yeah, yep. But this is
Mhm.
during the day after I went with you, and I outfished all of them,
Mhm.
like, it wasn't even close. Bill kept trying to legitimately cut my line when I had another fish on. Anyways,
That's
I
funny.
can't get back into this. I will talk about this day nonstop.
Mhm.
You did see the picture of that nice fat largemouth I caught today, right?
I did, yes. That I'm proud of you, buddy. I'm
That was
proud of you.
and that was Crush City.
That you caught
Did you
today?
go to Crush City? Which one did you catch it on?
I can't it's,
Ned? The BLT?
I think it was the BLT.
Ah, it's deadly. That is
Those things
so
are awesome.
deadly.
So Crush City is,
Allie, I do like your idea about GoProing because the story gets so distorted about this catch and all that happens
Mhm.
up there, you would be able to put the greatest compilation of guys
Oh,
throwing my musky baits into trees, on
love it.
rocks, hitting
Not
stuff,
me.
Love it.
like, oh, it's unbelievable. And then they're like, "Oh, what a terrible guide. He didn't get me a 50-incher." And I'm like, "Dude, we spent 90% of the time on shore trying to climb trees to get your lures back." I mean, I can't.
So
Or like John stabbing a beautiful 50-inch muskie in the snout as it tried to eat his
Not
bait on
my
the figure
fault.
eight, and he hits it with his rod and beats it off like that. Then he's like, "Oh, guide's fault."
I did
No.
not say guide's fault. There was nothing I could do. It was already in that, like, I was already making that motion, and the muskie cut across, and I hit it
Mhm,
with my pole.
mhm,
Plus, that one was not
mhm.
as big as the muskie I eventually caught,
It was
and
bigger.
I didn't put any of your lures into a tree. Rocks is a different story. That that was definitely me multiple
Which,
times.
by the way, they don't make those baits anymore. So, Allie, I mailed John's lure to him so that he could put it in his shadow box with his photo and his shirt and everything.
Which it
If
is.
you wouldn't mind opening that box and bringing that
Dude,
lure back up, we're gonna
I
need
would,
that next summer.
but I've been over to his house for, work hangs before, and his dog would eat me alive.
it does
So
not like Allie.
his dog does not
It
like me.
does. So
It does.
we were walking, I was walking as Allie was pulling up into my neighborhood, and
I made mistakes.
she stopped and rolled down the window, and he didn't like that. Like, that was the beginning. So we got back to the place, and she was parking in, like, this little annex parking, and he was like, "What? Who, that's the car. I don't like that car." And Allie tried to hide from him.
I thought maybe if I, like, thought skinny thoughts, you can't see me,
Uh-uh.
like,
So
just
he
kinda,
went
like, slide back a little bit and we'd be fine.
so he looks at her like prey. So I pulled him up the driveway, and she got out and tried to walk by, and she's like, just be okay and whatever." And I was like, "Yeah." And he
You were like,
went,
"Just act
"Bah, bah,
excited,
bah."
act excited." I was like, "Hi,
Yeah,
buddy."
no,
Yeah.
wasn't fooling him. He went to, like, he didn't bite at her, but he, like, aggressively snarled as he was moving forward towards her. So Allie and Brutus don't mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you gonna
So,
do?
I can't really help you with the shadow box, but I do wanna, like, re-highlight the fact that I think it's adorable that John made a shadow box.
Oh, it was
Isn't it
like,
cute?
it
So
was
cute.
the first thing I thought of once I got back to the, like, I'm like, I'm taking this shirt, I'm taking a picture of the fish. I don't know who it was, but somebody sent me I was in the uh newspaper up there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Somebody sent me a copy of that. So
So
was
Ben,
Ben?
who
Okay.
took the video, Ben Brett again from Onyx Hunt. Yeah, he took your picture and sent it in. They photoshopped a shirt over your exposed nipples, and then they put it
We
in
got
there. And then I got a copy of it and I mailed it to you with the lure, which you're really gonna need to bring that back because we're running low.
I
We're
really
running
I
low.
gotta bring that back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry
No,
about
I'm kidding. It's all
that. But
good.
real quick, we do have to explain the nipples thing. Um, 2
2
years ago,
2
Whitey, myself, and Travis went out every morning and every evening looking for muskies. And on the last day, we were like, rally shirt. Sometimes you'll wear your baseball cap upside down. Well,
Mhm.
we cut off the sleeves of our shirt while we were out in the boat. So this year, Travis sent me a message just before we were getting ready to go saying, "Don't forget your rally shirt." I was like,
Mhm.
awesome. I went to my storage locker because a lot of those clothes are in storage, tore through everything, found it, took a picture of it, sent it to him, and was like, "I'm good to go." Get there, did not pack it.
Mm.
So they decided that every time I went out fishing for a muskie and
Mhm.
didn't get one, I lost a piece of that shirt.
Mm.
So it went left sleeve, right sleeve. And this was happening too fast too, because they counted every session as a full day for some reason.
Mhm.
So
No,
my
it was a
next
session. We established right away a morning. So how it works is we wake up early with the sun. We go
Mhm.
out for about an hour, hour and a half and fish, and then we come back for breakfast. And then everyone else that doesn't wake up early, then we all go out fishing as a group and we have a game plan for the day. And then we fish all day. We have shore lunch on an island. We do whatever we feel like in the afternoon. We come back for dinner. And then after dinner, I take somebody, John, out muskie fishing and or somebody else, hopefully they get to experience what a muskie catch is like because Lake of the Woods is a world class muskie fishery, one of the best in the entire world. and we're on an island in the middle of nowhere on this beautiful lake. So every time we would go, we'd say that's a session. And if John didn't catch his muskie, that counted as a session. Go ahead, John. Take it from there.
So my next option was I could either turn it into a midriff
which probably would have been the better
or
option.
cut the nipples out of it. So I chose.
So you went the Mean Girls route instead of
You
just
say
saying
that was like an option as if we suggested that. You were the one that suggested that. Nobody said, John, lose the nipples or take it
No,
up a notch.
what else was I to do, Travis? What else was I
You
to
had
do?
Had a
whatever
flat
you
back.
wanted. You just had to, yes.
That's on the sides.
So, anyways, many times that has been printed, sent, whatever. Photoshop has been used to cover
the indecencies.
my
The
yes.
headlights. The headlights were just staring. It was uncomfortable fishing. I'm standing next to him on the deck. I'm drinking coffee, enjoying a beautiful sunrise, and I look to my right, and there are John's nipples staring at me. And all I can think of is, oh, please catch a fish because I don't know what he's going to take off next.
So I had actually I stopped wearing the shirt because I'm like, it's not doing me any good. And it was just before I got on the boat for that one. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wear it. I'm like, it's a funny gag, if nothing else.
Mhm.
So it was a very good thing that I did. But I'm so pumped up for this.
So this
We're
for
gonna have
this
so much
next
fun.
year, and I make not to pull the hey, I'm a girl adding into the guys trip, do special things for me. But my one request is, can we not have you wear a shirt that you have little
Oh,
circles
that
cut out of?
shirt's never coming out of the
Great.
shadow box.
Then I'm
That's
content. I have no other requests.
in
That's
there
it.
and done.
We're good.
In there and done.
It's not a guy's trip, Allie. We've had other ladies join us in the past.
well,
so this
I'll be
is
right back.
this just
I gotta get a power thing.
Yeah, this last year, I think this last year they were all guys. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think
So
so.
from
Not
a
by
Walton
design. Just
perspective, at least, it's been
Yep.
only men from Walton that have gone, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we are very much excited. You are going to be treated like a queen up there,
thank you.
and John is going to be treated way, way more poorly as he should be. So he'll be put in his rightful place. Don't you worry.
That'll be absolutely perfect. I'm excited. Do I need to do some sort of training beforehand on this? Because I have not fished actively in a great deal of years.
So I have taken hundreds of people out fishing over the years, and what I've learned is that women are the easiest to train, to
Okay.
teach, because they actually listen. Next, believe it or not, is children.
Okay.
Last would be men. Men are the hardest. So if John can learn, you can learn, Allie,
Okay.
and you'll learn way quicker. Yeah, you don't have to
Okay.
prepare anything. No, we got
Okay.
you. What is he
Perfect.
building over there?
He's his
First of
computer's
all,
about to
I
die.
know from context. I know what was just said.
What
there.
did he say?
If John can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And second of all, let's be honest. It wasn't until the last day that we were up, the last full day we went fishing, that I actually enjoyed going after walleye. Because it is just this.
Okay.
Like if you can do that, you can catch them. Now, where the skill really comes in is the guides knowing what to throw out there.
Yeah.
And then actually realizing what's a hit and what's not. Because it is not a largemouth bass hitting your worm. It is a tap. And then occasionally you get a pike, like that huge 38-inch pike I caught that just comes in and hits it like a freight train.
Yeah.
Those are
Such
fun.
a humble brag. I love how you snuck that in. Way to go, buddy. I was like, is he going to sneak in the big pike too? There it is. He did it.
I also caught the biggest
Fiji
walleye
today?
that day. So
Oh
just,
my
no
gosh.
big deal.
It's a humble brag day.
No
Biggest muskie, biggest walleye, biggest pike, all in one day. He took, because we have contests. And then we have, Allie, now you have to come up prepared to speak. If you win, you have a victory speech at dinner. So mentally
I
prepare
don't have a
yourself.
problem speaking. Like we said before, I might black out while I'm speaking, but put a mic in front of me. I love a good stage. Everybody's going to pay attention to me for 60 seconds. Oh, I'm in.
The other thing, we do a great shore lunch up there. That's incredible.
It sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, it just can feel it
There's
already. I don't know.
The only thing bad about it, and Travis, I actually wanted to get your opinion on this. What do you think it's going to be like going through customs this year? You think this is a year maybe everything gets pulled out of your boat?
It's
What?
so it's always just a wild card. going through customs because when we go through there, we're a lot of times we're filming up in Canada, and you get, depending on the security guy at customs, depends on if you're going to get through or not.
Mm,
And so I've got all kinds of different Canadian documents saying this is what we're doing, this is where we're going. Here's a letter of invite from a resort, or we're a United States, Minnesota based company invited to come up and document an adventure in this place to highlight one of your resources where people can come up, because fishing lodges call us or want us to come up and do stories up there all the time to
yeah.
promote what they're offering to United States anglers, right? Um, but it really depends on even all the documents that we can print up, and I bring a folder. It depends on the guy at the gate if you're going to get through or not, or what they want to do. And there are weird things that you can't bring across the border. So, and I'm not talking drugs, I'm talking like worms and or potatoes, things like that where you
Yeah.
can't bring things across. So, um, yeah, they decide if they think you're a trustworthy guy, which is why I don't like riding with John, because I don't want my boat to get stripped. I've had him go through my tackle box lures before, and
That's
I'm like,
insane.
wow, it is insane. And then there's times where they look at you and they're like, when you coming back? Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, have a great trip. And I'm like, thank you much. Appreciate it.
So, but
So yeah.
that's been all the times, or both times I went up, it's been that. It's been the, "Let me see
Hmm.
your
Yeah.
passports. All right, have a good day," basically. But he was talking the first time, telling me that pulling everything out of the boat story,
Yeah.
and always was sticking in the back of my mind. And then as soon as I heard about this tariff war we were having with Canada, my
Oh, no.
first thought was, "I bet you it's gonna be harder for us to get through customs getting in."
It'll be interesting to see. So much of the Canadian resort businesses do rely on anglers from the United States going up. So if you would sit there and count vehicles that go through June, July, August, September, a very large percentage of them have a boat attached to them.
Right.
They're going fishing, and that's a huge business. So I think people at the crossing, they get that. They know that this is money coming into their country, and these resorts rely on it too. So I expect, well, actually, I don't expect anything. I have no idea what it's going to be like, but I do trust that this is a livelihood for a lot
Mm,
of people in their country, and they're gonna want United States anglers up there fishing this summer.
mm.
Yeah, well, they
Okay.
need it. I mean, I think Minnesota's gotta have close to the population of Canada,
Mm.
right? There's 30 million people in Canada. There's I don't know how many people in Minnesota, but it's, you know,
I'm a guy of the woods. I'm a prairie guy. I don't count
you
numbers. I,
stay
I
out
have
of
no idea. Yeah.
listen, I say it all the time. You have a beautiful state, but man, I hate Minneapolis with a deep
I'm not a
passion.
city person. I'm
Oh,
not. I know you've had bad experiences going downtown. I, as a general rule, avoid traffic and people. I get lost in cities, but I can walk in the middle of a wilderness without another human for 20 miles and you
yeah.
can't lose me, which is crazy. My wife just shakes her head, and you get me downtown and I'm like, I don't know where to go. I get nervous. I get anxious. I don't know where to park. I don't know. I can't get over. I don't want to be a jerk. I'm not going to cut him off. She's like, cut him off. Get over. I'm like, I don't like this. Everything about this down here is full of anxiety. Get me out of the city. I can't handle it. And as soon as I get out on the like dirt, oh, everything just slows down a little bit, but on concrete, I'm not good. I am not one with the concrete.
Well, I mean, you have black bears up there and wolves, but I mean, much more dangerous downtown than being out in the wilderness with
Still
those
pretty
animals for
valid.
sure. Alright.
Right,
Um,
right.
Travis, I wanna be real respectful of your time. It's been an hour and a half. Do you have a cutoff for this?
I don't, no.
You don't? Okay.
I
Well, then
I do have a family to go home to tonight at some point.
Nice.
So,
at some
I
point,
Keep
we
that in
will
mind.
get you
at
home.
some point.
I came
Yeah.
across this picture earlier when I was looking at
Mm,
pictures of muskies, and because you know, you helped me catch my first muskie in a long time when I came up and we went to your home lake, which I'm
Mhm.
assuming you said your home waters instead of the name of your lake because 'cause you're trying not to let people know where your home lake
No,
is?
no, not at all. I mean, I grew up fishing and guiding on Lake Minnetonka, Lake Mille Lacs, and Lake Waconia. I started a guide service back in high school. Those are all 3 very well-known lakes in our state for muskie fishing. And there are muskies in Lake Waconia, which is where I took you. And yeah, it's not at all a secret.
Okay. All right. But you helped me catch my first muskie in a long time on Waconia. But I had caught muskies before growing up in New York. We have good muskies up there.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
never made it up to the St. Lawrence River or anything like that. But we've got
monsters up
some,
there.
yeah, I think that's where the unofficial record's from,
Mm.
if
Yeah, I
I'm
think you're
correct.
right.
Yeah, they
Yep.
what it, will that ever be
Well,
broken? Because it was
yeah.
1949 was the record, and then it got
Mm.
broken twice, but they went back and like unvalidated those two.
Hmm.
Yeah, I honestly, I've kind of, and this might sound dumb, I should know, but I've kind of just lost interest in the whole record thing, which I guess I don't know because so many people are saying it's not real. Like if you look at it, compare it to this, I mean, I could make a 10-pound fish look like 20, and I can make a 20-pound fish look like 10, and so can anybody else, depending on how you hold it and distance. And there's so many other things too. So
So
I don't
speaking
know
on
what
how
to
we hold
believe.
it, what do you think about this? Because when
I
I
think
saw
that
that
looks like
in a little thumbnail, I thought that those were those little tiny hands things, but
no,
it's not
that's
even
bear.
that's
That's a bear hug. And honestly, that's a
Yeah.
great way to hold that fish because if he's holding that by the gills up in the air with one hand, you're putting all the weight of that fish on the gills, which could stretch it and rip it, and that fish could swim away and then die an hour later. By bear hugging it like that, hopefully the fish doesn't thrash, he doesn't rip anything in the gills, and it survives just fine when he releases it. To me, that looks like about a 47-inch muskie.
not quite as big as
Okay.
mine. Sounds good.
Mhm,
It's just
mhm.
the way he's holding it makes the belly of it look extra full.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just that's a time of year thing, right? That fish is probably trying to fatten up.
I'm looking at the trees, I'm looking at what he's wearing, it looks like he's got cargo shorts and a t-shirt, that's probably a July or August fish,
Oh, wow,
which
okay.
means it's kinda just in its normal weight for the season. They're gonna bulk up a little bit starting in October and then November and December, at least in our area where the lakes freeze over, they put on their max weight, heading into well, I shouldn't say max weight because sometimes before the spawn, they can be pretty heavy too, but they usually get really thick before the lakes freeze up. They're kind of like I explain to people, it's kind of like a bear. Their metabolism slows way down in the winter,
Mm.
and so they eat everything in the fall, and their metabolism when the water gets cold slows down. It's just like eating a Big Mac. It just sits there, and then eat another one, and it just sits there. And so they put on several extra pounds. So a 50-inch muskie up here in July is going to weigh quite a bit less than a 50-incher in November before the lake freezes. And then they do eat through the winter, but they're not a common catch. A lot of people, even on musky lakes that have a lot of them, don't catch a lot of them during the winter season. They slow way down and they're just not that aggressive. And then during the hot time of the year, their metabolism is higher, so they might eat two times during a day, which gives
Mm.
you more opportunities to try to catch them. But they are not an easy fish to catch, which is what is the lure behind it. There are certain things that trigger them to feed, which is really cool. The sun, the moon, weather, all of these factors trigger them to want to strike. You don't just go out and catch muskies. Now, I've done it. Some
Mhm.
days they're just on fire, but other days it's like they will only eat at this certain time. And understanding that is a huge
Mhm.
part of the equation, which is why I get up early when we're up there because sunrise and
Mhm.
sunset are two key feeding periods every day where they might, not guaranteed, but they might decide they're going to eat. And typically, when one muskie decides it's going to eat, whatever triggered that one to bite, it triggers all of them. So you get
Okay.
these little feeding windows that happen, and that's when you gotta make hay because you might fish for 4 hours or 5 hours and not see a single fish. And in 7 casts, you might have 3 strikes and two more follows. I've done it. And then afterwards, 4 more hours of nothing. So depending on your timing, you could be casting over the top of a fish that has zero interest in eating.
Hmm.
The most interesting thing to me with going musky fishing with you, and I believe you brought it up, was the difference between musky fishing and other fishing is a lot like hunting versus fishing. Like, we're not just thinking there's a school of fish out there and this should be what they're eating. We know there's a fish off that point,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to try and induce him
Mm-hmm.
into striking.
Hmm.
So, uh, you've done all these insane hunts. You're one in Alaska. You were telling us about last time how difficult how far was the hike before you even got to where you were going to shoot?
Well, we did a hike in for ptarmigan a couple years ago. Two different hunts in the same trip. One we flew in, and another one we hiked in. But from where we parked our vehicle and started hiking, I think we hiked like 7 or 8 miles, and then it was about a 4,000 foot elevation climb through those miles too. So it was a few hours hauling all our gear and camera equipment up there before we even got to the place where we started to hunt.
Oops, what did I do? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. Where did you lose me?
No, I don't think we ever lost you. I
Yeah.
just made everything look weird. So you were saying
Oh,
it was
yeah,
hours
it was
before you even.
yeah, it was a couple of hours and lugging our gear all the way up the mountain before we even got to where the birds that we were going to hunt even lived. So that those type of adventures to me, oh gosh, I just like it's something primal inside almost. Like I can't really explain it. You're in a place that makes you feel so small and you look around and you think, gosh, has somebody else ever stepped foot here before?
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
good
and
spot.
will somebody else again? And it just that feeling, I just, oh, I wish everybody could experience it.
So would you say that ptarmigan hunt in Alaska is your most exotic's the wrong word, but challenging?
Probably not, but maybe the most wild. Um, I've chucker hunted Nevada, Idaho, Wyoming. Um, I think they're all memorable for their own different reasons. And now that I have kids and bringing them out and my wife, I mean, we did a horseback hunt a few years ago, several years ago now, but that one still just rises up to the top of my memory bank just because of, you're riding the prairie with horses, watching dogs run. It's just majestic.
What was that hunt for?
Sharp-tailed grouse and prairie chicken.
Okay.
And you've
I
said,
think,
go ahead.
yeah, I think if somebody listening right now has a wife or a husband or a boyfriend or girlfriend and you really want to do something amazing together, try that hunt. Bring
Mm.
her out in that the horses, my wife loves the adventure. She loves to be outdoors too, but the horses that really brought everything to another level, and we still talk about it all the time. Now I've taken my kids out, and we've done other hunts together, and I brought my wife and all my kids and my mom even out to North Dakota this fall so they could experience what that is like and why that's one of my favorite places to go every year. And I had 3 goals on that. I wanted them to have the opportunity to get a bird. My wife got her first pheasant. My son, who I took the year prior, my oldest, he had already gotten his first pheasant, and we filmed that TV show, and they watched it, and they were all like, "Daddy, can we go?" It's like, "Absolutely."
Sweet.
There there were there are moose. There's a very strong moose population in northern third of northern half of North Dakota. The population keeps growing, and I wanted them to see a moose. But I really also wanted them to see the migration because there's a small part of our country, our continent, that has a real migration. The area that we live in, Minnesota, they there we get some flocks, a couple dozen birds or 100 birds might come through, but not thousands. And it's a powerful thing to experience it in person. So we were in an area that had migration happening. I found a roost, excuse me. I found a roost and it was near some public land and water. And I said, we're going to hunt this edge tonight, knowing that we're going to work our way up by these snow geese. And I assume they're going to go out to feed that night. And they happened to do so when we were walking right up on them. And I had my whole family there. And my son had just shot his first Hungarian partridge. My wife had her first pheasant, and my other son had a pheasant too. And I had my daughter, my 2-year-old at the time, she was in a backpack that I carried. I didn't have a shotgun, but she rode in a backpack. and my other daughter was walking at my side, and that sky turned white and they flew over the top of us, and everybody went silent, and you just took it in, and the power was unbelievable. And then a few feet ahead of us, we saw a moose track, and my daughter, my 7-year-old, she could put her entire foot
Oh,
inside that moose track in the wet dirt. And so we were all just like, wow, could you imagine how big this animal is? And my son Weston, he looks up and he goes, there he is. And we looked on the horizon, and there is a bull moose standing there looking at us. And that moose walked all the way across the prairie in front of us and eventually crossed about 150 yards away. And I put everyone in a safe position so that we weren't going to be like, you don't mess with a moose,
no.
especially a big one.
Yeah.
But just everything happened right there, and all the things that I wanted them to see and experience were just it just happened. It was just magic, and I can't even explain it. And fortunately, we filmed that one too, so we're gonna have that episode going out this year on the flush, and I'm really looking forward to that one because those are memories that I keep with me. But I really hope that it inspires other people to get out, bring their family, bring their kids, bring anybody with to see some of those things out there because the wild world is a dang special place.
Mhm.
And the more you share it with people, the more people care about it too.
Mhm.
Yeah, not enough people get out and touch grass anymore, and I think we see
Mm.
that in our society. People who are
So much.
ill-adjusted because they don't get to spend time out
Mhm.
in nature.
And I love, like, the entire story that you just explained too is just things you can't plan, and we live in such a world that's you have to plan every second of the day. I mean, we work in marketing, we do a lot of planning on things, but you just going out into nature and you don't know what's gonna happen, and that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it, is, like, a moose could walk out in front of you. The last time I went hunting with my family, one of my favorite moments is my 7-year-old nephew kept running on grass and just tripping and falling on his face because his little legs couldn't, like, make it through stuff, and he'd pop right back up, and he's like, "I'm good," but he would just immediately fall back over again. It's
He
like those, like, just random little things happen, it's fun.
he was trying to outrace the dogs to down birds. It was
Is that what that
that
was?
was awesome. That was
Oh,
absolutely
that
awesome.
is so great.
Coming.
Whack, boom, down. But listen, we wanna be respectful of your time. We're at an hour and 45 now.
Wow. It's
Yeah,
been
I know.
great chatting with
Really
you
fast.
guys. I could do this every day. I wish we should have our own podcast so we could just talk every single day.
Hey, I
We could do that.
I'd be down for that. I can talk and talk and talk, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
Just one thing, the correct answer to
Oh, no.
who the most famous person you've ever brought out,
Oh,
how is it
John
obviously, it's me.
John Tremblay.
Yeah, there you go.
John, AKA John Walton.
You said Dale Earnhardt, and I was like, "Okay, maybe he's got me there."
I
But
mean,
then you're
but
bringing up Mike Zimmer? Who's
I
this
don't
this?
know. I
summer,
don't know if he's
it's
the
gonna be
most famous or
No,
yeah.
that's still awesome. Next year, we need to make it a point to get Austin to come back up to, Waconia, and we'll get back out on the lake again. Allie, you can obviously come as
I
well
was gonna
too,
say, am I
but yeah,
getting
yeah,
replaced?
you can obviously come as well,
Yeah.
because that was a blast just going, bass fishing, and that's where I started suspecting that something was different about Travis and fishing. Like, he's not just a guide. I described it
He's
as
good.
an encyclopedic knowledge of this lake where he almost knew the fish's names. Like, we pulled up, he set his, it's not an anchor, it's his trolling motor that keeps us there. He
Mhm.
said, "You're gonna wanna throw it 30 yards out that way. As soon as it hits the water, it's gonna start dropping, and at about 10 feet, they're gonna hit." And I mean, just everything he said kept happening
Huh,
exactly as he said it was. It
that's
was
cool.
incredible. In fact, my worm kept coming, plastic worm just kept coming down slightly, and he's like, "No, they can see that." He's like, "You have to make sure it's up all the way
Huh.
every time."
I've got a fix for that now, by the way.
What
It's
is
been a little while. Huh? Well, I gotta save something. I can't
I
just tell you every detail right now, otherwise they're gonna be sending me all these fish pictures and I'm not a part of it.
Fair,
I
fair, fair.
Mhm. Mhm.
No, we don't have the fish down here that are really impressive enough to I sent you that picture today because it was the first fish of the year, but the bar is pretty high now. for
Yeah.
what Travis should be sent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and now I feel like there's just a lot of pressure. I don't know if we can. I mean, we've talked about this day that we've shared together, and we've had many days now on the water, but that one was pretty dang epic. And I don't use the word epic lightly. It just really was. And now I feel like I just don't want to disappoint you because I don't know how you can't sustain something that high for all this time. So I don't want to fish with you this year.
No,
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
fish
no,
with
no,
Allie.
no, that's
It's
not
about
true
the
at all.
experience. Yeah, I have no expectations, so we catch any fish and
I
it's
told
gonna
you
be
earlier
great
that
success.
one of my favorite fishing days was the day that nothing was caught after that rainstorm. So
Yeah.
it's not all about fishing. I mean, if I can
Mhm.
catch another 80 fish, yeah, I wanna do that, but
You will.
it's about
You will.
being out there. It's about the beauty
Mhm.
of the land, the experience,
Yeah,
and bringing a little freedom to Canada.
Yeah.
Bringing a little
absolutely.
US freedom to Canada.
I always tell people some of my most memorable experiences out there are the days that we failed
Mm.
and something went wrong. And that's the beauty of it. When you're in it together, you leave with a bond that only you and whoever you enjoyed or experienced or hated that with can really understand. And
Yeah.
that's a lifelong thing. That's the beauty of being in a wild place.
Well, if I'm still in my current house when you guys come down to, film some stuff when we get the new place
Mhm.
moved in, you'll have to come over to my house. We'll cook up some steaks, you can meet my
Yes.
dog, and we'll throw a few lines on my pond.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you making time for me today.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Travis, and, we will talk to you in just a few short months here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks for checking out the Meatgistics podcast. To shop everything but the meat, head on over to waltons.com. To get your meat processing questions answered by experts and enthusiasts alike, head on over to our online community at meatgistics.com. Waltons, everything but the meat.